Hello and welcome to the Energy Detox, coming to you today from outside the EQT gate at PPG Paints Arena, a couple miles away from the big Energy and Innovation Summit that occurred yesterday on the campus of Carnegie Mellon University. And during that summit, there was a whole list of all-stars or heavy hitters or whatever analogy you want to use to last night's MLB All-Star game who talked. There's a lot of panels, there were hours of talking, all of which is publicly available for you to watch or listen to if you're so inclined. But throughout all of that talking, there's one speaker, there's one set of insights that stood out to me. And that speaker was Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs fame, a show that has been on air for 22 years. And Mike Rowe was addressing something critical to the macro conversation. That is, if companies are going to invest $90+ billion into the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, well, they're going to need people, they're going to need workers to actually put that money to use. They're actually going to need people employed doing the things that need to get done, especially as it relates to the trades, construction, and electrical workers, and anything that's involved in manufacturing and the putting up of new buildings and infrastructure that is going to fuel the future here in Pennsylvania and in turn throughout the United States. But Mike's comments, in my mind at least, were not limited to, again, that macro. He wasn't just there, in my mind, addressing the big needs of these companies, the big needs of our nation. To me, he was touching on something that a lot of leaders that I work with fail to do. And that is to showcase exactly what it is that they accomplish. Because there's so many leaders, you may very well be one of them, who is unwittingly, not resting on your laurels, but unwittingly allowing the results to speak for themselves when in many cases they don't. There's many leaders, again, including yourself, who are missing out on opportunities to better showcase, to better storytell. And that was the point of Mike yesterday. He said, we need to do a better job of storytelling. We need to do a better job of showing what it is these jobs entail. And we'll get into more details exactly about what Mike said. But for those of you who've already had enough of this episode, I at least want to leave you with that question, which is, what opportunities do you have to better showcase, to better tell your story? To not stop when these nice, pretty, sexy results, if you will, are shared with your stakeholders. You know, we're in the midst of Q2 earnings season when companies are pulling together all of their results to show to investors and anybody else that, hey, you know what? We're not just a bunch of words, we're not just a bunch of empty promises. You know, here are the actions that we take and here are the results that we're taking. And that's good. But what I'm saying today is that it's not enough. It's not enough to say, hey, you know, actions speak louder than words and, you know, here are the results that we've generated. Sometimes you actually need to showcase those results. Show how the sausage is made, if you will, to a greater extent than you currently are. And while this certainly applies to current and future labor, and showcasing, again, what welders do, what electricians do, what the construction workers who I'm surrounded by here PPG Paints Arena are doing right now. It's equally important for you, especially if you're in a white-collar role, to also showcase how you actually achieve those results, to shed some light into what it is you do on a day-to-day basis so that your audience doesn't just hear what you have to say and then dismiss those results and kind of move on to the next thing, without actually finding opportunities to better connect, to better engage with you and your team. It's a huge miss that, again, I see all the time, and it's one that, over the next couple of minutes, I want to offer some tools, some practical approaches that I deploy with leaders like you to overcome this lack of showcasing, this lack of storytelling, if you will, that is so critical for leaders to actually sustain the momentum that they may very well be building. So, that being said, let's go back to what exactly Mike Rowe said yesterday. And here's his quote, word for word. He said, what I would propose with all humility is that somebody somewhere carves out just a little sliver out of that, and by that he means the $90 billion in investments that were announced yesterday, a fraction of a percent, and allocates it for better storytelling. Our country needs a national resource. Pennsylvania can lead this charge where any parent, any guidance counselor, any kid who is curious enough to explore the opportunities we are talking about can go to a destination and see people who look like them and talk like them and remind them of them prospering as a result of mastering a skill that's in demand. He continues, if we just dismiss that as PR, then we're just going to keep pushing the same rock up the same hill. And now, in listening to Mike talk, again, not in person, I was not there in person at Carnegie Mellon University yesterday, but in hearing that and then having the luxury of going back and re-listening to it, I obviously understood what he was talking about from a workforce standpoint. And that's not an uncommon theme here in Western Pennsylvania and around the country. That is the lack of workers, lack of current workers, and certainly the lack of future labor that will be required to, again, put all of those billions of dollars to good use. But I didn't just hear him talking about the macro. What I heard was, hey, there's opportunities internally for companies to actually showcase what individual workers are doing to other workers, to actually share what it is they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And some of that you might think of as lunch and learns and the occasional presentation. And sure, there's a piece of that. But more importantly, what are you doing? And how are you missing out on small opportunities to grab somebody by the hand and say, hey, are you curious about what I do? Taking your computer screen, if you're in an office setting, and turning it around and saying, hey, look, this is what I'm looking at today. Have you seen this before? Engaging, again, with other departments in a way that you've never done before. That's not scripted. To actually show them, not just tell them, but show them what it is you do. Again, this is cliche, something that's talked about all the time, but it's so often missed. Why? Because individual leaders like you, individual teams like the one that you might be a part of, are so busy generating results and taking action, which is a good thing, that they miss the opportunity to, again, take that small sliver of resources, which might not be money in your case, it might just be time, but that small sliver of resources that Mike Rowe is talking about, and invest that into better storytelling and showcasing. So again, the question for you today is, what can you do to enhance the visibility to what it is that you and your team do internally, not just in the macro? Because in the macro, you know what? I would imagine there was a lot of industry leaders there yesterday who heard Mike Rowe talk and immediately said to themselves, at least internally, we're doing that already. We are showcasing what we're doing. We're taking people from the community, we're taking high schoolers, we're showing them what we do. And it's true, right? There's all kinds of rig tours and there's all kinds of intern type programs. There's a great program that CNX runs called the Mentorship Academy, where again, they embed high school students into real jobs, not just energy jobs, but real, local, hardworking, good paying, sustainable jobs. And they're doing a lot of what Mike Rowe is talking about, which is again why I quickly pivoted to what is being missed inside of companies, to showcase what individual departments do to build those strengths, to break down silos, if you will. Because again, it's easy, it's free, it just takes a little bit of time, but the fruit that is born in terms of the sustained momentum, the sustained engagement of a company is mind-bogglingly high, if you will, from an ROI standpoint. So, again, same question I've asked a couple times already. What can you do to enhance those connections with those around you so that you're not unwittingly hiding the real work that you do? What can you do to showcase, literally show, not just tell, but show and tell what it is you do? And perhaps the best analogy for that is, again, going back to Mike Rowe, the high school shop class. Mike spent a couple moments lamenting the loss of high school shop classes, not just for those individuals who might be inclined to enter a shop class and work with their hands and discover some things that they enjoy doing, but just as much for those who aren't going to go into work that maybe involves their hands and not go into trades and carpentry, construction, and things of that nature. Mike said, when you take shop classes out of high schools, you also miss those opportunities for osmosis, if you will. For people who are just walking down the hall to peek into a shop class and kind of see what's going on, so that they can form a better sense, a better awareness of what it is people do. Again, not just kind of hear these descriptions of these jobs and what they do and then dismiss them as something that's not applicable. Mike laments the loss of shop classes because it was what? A showcase. And I know I've said that word a couple different times, showcase, in part because it's fresh in my brain from an offsite, a 2-day offsite for a leadership team that I helped facilitate. And obviously, in the offsite, the team talked about the actions that they can take as a result of getting together and talking and outlining different elements of feedback from their teams, much as what occurred yesterday at that summit, right? You could talk and talk and talk, but this leadership team recognized the importance of taking action. But in that conversation, where they also found themselves was talking about the importance of showcasing those actions, demonstrating those actions, not just generating results, perhaps bottom line results in terms of financial results and engagement results and lower turnover results and all of the different things that companies might tout, but actually having real one-on-one conversations. Again, grabbing somebody by the hand and walking with them and talking about what it is they discussed behind closed doors at this offsite. That's the real way to build engagement. To not just stop at saying, hey, we took action, here were the actions, and go forth. Shed some light into the thinking. Shed some light into what's on your mind as an individual leader so that you're controlling that narrative, so that you're telling the story, and so that you're not relying on your stakeholders to come up with their own story, with their own narrative that may not be complete. It may not be wrong, but it may not be complete. And that's the point today. If you've already made a $90 billion commitment to something, much as all of those companies yesterday made $90 billion in commitments to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, why not do as Mike Rowe said and take a tiny sliver of money, tiny sliver of resources to make sure that the momentum that was discussed yesterday is sustained? Why not take that same idea, apply it to your own life, to your own leadership, build upon, again, the huge investment that you've made to this point in your career and take that tiny sliver of time and energy and say, hey, how could I tell a slightly better story? How could I showcase a little bit more what it is I do? And as I move to conclusion here, and again, tying together this whole idea of jobs and people who are looking for new careers or maybe pivoting in their own career, I'd be remiss not to bring in one more example from the work that I do as a coach, especially when it relates to career coaching. Because so often I encounter individuals who already have this nice, beautiful resume, or maybe they've outsourced the resume writing and somebody's currently writing this resume. And it all comes back to them doing the right things. That is putting in the results, right? Putting in big eye-popping numbers like the $90 billion number that was touted yesterday. And that's great. Clearly, I would suggest that you actually have real numbers, real results, real proof, demonstrated proof of your actions on your resume. But it's amazing how many individuals in career transition, they fall short of telling that story. They fall short of actually showcasing why those numbers matter. Just as Mike Rowe said yesterday, we can do all of this, and this is good, and we can create those jobs, and we can have trade schools and funnel people through these. But if you're not telling a good story, if you're not connecting it to people's individual bottom lines, you're gonna fall short. And that's true in career coaching, and it's true, again, if you are a leader within an organization. If you can't connect those results, if you can't connect those investments, if you can't connect the financial metrics that, again, your company might be talking about as Q2 closes here and numbers are released, if you can't connect those to the individuals and tell a story of why it matters, tell a story of why success or lack of success matters for an individual contributor within your company, well, you failed. Even if you're achieving great success, great results, you are not in a sustainable position. And I say that as somebody who is on a mission, if you will, to help fuel sustainable leaders. Not just leaders who achieve results, not just leaders who can pat themselves on the back after a long career because of everything that, again, can flow into a resume or a bio, but it's leaders who are actually building those engagements, those connections, those channels with the future, like the future workforce here in Western Pennsylvania and in turn America, who are truly sustainable leaders. So if you want to be a sustainable leader, ask yourself again today, how can you build stronger connections with the people right in front of you? How can you take the results that are right in front of you and translate that into actions that showcase what it is you do, why it is you do what you do, and why it matters to your stakeholders. So with that, thank you as always for tuning in here to the Energy Detox. And until next time, take care and have a great rest of the day.